Welcome to Lies and Secrets channel. We hope you will have fun with us. Enjoy watching. Charlotte was 33 years old, a wife and mother, trying her best to keep her family life together. Her husband, Arthur, worked long hours at a busy job. He was hardly home, and when he was, he always seemed distracted. Their family didn't feel as close as it used to, but Charlotte kept going for the sake of their 9-year-old son, Archie. Lately, though, Charlotte noticed something strange about Archie. He had started asking unusual questions about his dad. He often shut himself in his room quietly playing or drawing. But every now and then he would bring up Arthur in ways that made Charlotte uneasy. One evening, as Charlotte cooked dinner, Archie wandered into the kitchen. He hesitated before asking, "Mom, why does Dad always talk to that lady on the phone?" Charlotte froze. She turned to her son, trying to keep her face calm. "What lady, sweetheart?" she asked gently. "I don't know her name." Archie shrugged, "But I hear him talking to her a lot when he's in his office." He laughs too. "He never laughs like that with us." Charlotte felt like she was punched in the *****T with the words of Archie. A surge of doubt and hurt swept through her mind. Who was that woman Archie talked about? And why was Arthur acting so differently? She wouldn't like to jump to conclusions. But the innocent question Archie asked planted some suspicion in her heart. As she lay in bed that night, Charlotte couldn't seem to get what Archie had said to her out of her head. Moments started replaying for her. Arthur's late nights, distracted act, and his playing with his phone all the time. She tried telling herself it was nothing and perhaps a complete misunderstanding. But deep inside, she knew something wasn't right. The next day, Charlotte opened her eyes. She kept noticing the small things she hadn't paid attention to before. Arthur would smile to his phone quite a lot. He has also started locking his phone before he used to leave it lying around everywhere, and there was a faint scent of perfume on his jacket that Charlotte didn't recognize. Charlotte told herself not to panic. Maybe there was a perfectly good explanation, but every time she tried to convince herself, Archie's question echoed in her mind. Why does Dad talk to that lady? Charlotte realized she had 3 choices. She could ignore her feelings and pretend everything was fine, or she could try to find out the truth. But she also knew that once she started looking, there was no turning back. Sometimes digging for answers leads to things you wish you'd never known for. Now she kept quiet, watching and waiting. Something told her that life as she knew it was about to change forever. The morning after Archie's strange question, Charlotte couldn't shake the uneasiness in her heart. It followed her like a shadow, no matter how hard she tried to brush it off. She told herself again and again that it was probably nothing, just the imagination of a curious child. But the little things Archie had said lingered. And soon Charlotte began noticing more signs that didn't feel quite right. One day, while cleaning up after breakfast, Charlotte picked up Arthur's work bag to put it in their bedroom. As she moved it, something caught her eye. There was a faint red Charlie on the strap, something she hadn't noticed before. She squinted, her mind racing. Could it be lipstick? She tried to tell herself it wasn't, but her stomach churned at the possibility. That afternoon, while Charlotte and Archie were playing in the yard, she noticed a car parked across the street. A sleek black car that he did not recognize had been parked for about an hour. The windows were tinted so he couldn't see through them, but they seemed to have something on them. He watched her every few minutes and wondered if she was overreacting. Perhaps it belonged to a neighbor's guest. Maybe it was just a coincidence. The next day, however, Charlotte saw the same car again, this time parked a short distance down the street. Stay a while before driving away. Charlotte's heart pounded. Was he doing things, or was someone watching? A few days later, Archie ran into Charlotte with a painting he had done. She handed it to him and smiled proudly. "Look, Mom, me, you and Dad." Charlotte laughed at first. She loved pictures of Archie. They were always vibrant and full of life, but when he looked closely, something stopped him. There were 4 people in the picture, not 3. Archie had pulled another long-haired redhead next to Arthur. "Who is this dear?" Charlotte asked, trying to keep her voice light. She's the woman Daddy talks to. On the phone, Archie said slyly, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Charlotte felt the ground shift beneath her feet. He stared at the picture, speechless. Archie's innocent words felt like swords to his sich ******T. That night, as Charlotte lay in bed, she thought about everything: the lipstick Charlie, the strange car, the woman in Archie's drawing. Her mind was a whirlwind of questions. Who was this woman? Why was Arthur talking to her? And why was Archie aware of it? The next morning, Charlotte decided to take action. She wasn't sure what she was looking for, but she knew she had to start somewhere. She began paying closer attention to Arthur's behavior, watching for anything unusual. She noticed how he seemed to guard his phone more than he used to, how he would step outside to take certain calls. She even caught him smiling at his screen. Once a smile she hadn't seen directed at her in months. Then one evening, as Charlotte tucked Archie into bed, he leaned close to her and whispered, "Mom, Dad told me not to tell you about the lady." Charlotte froze. "What do you mean? Archie?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "He said it's a secret," Archie said, looking down at his blanket. "He told me not to talk about her to you." Charlotte felt her heart break in that moment. Archie's words confirmed her worst fears. It wasn't jetting her head. Something was going on, and Arthur was dragging their son into it for the first time. Charlotte didn't just feel suspicious, but she also felt betrayed. How can Arthur get involved with Archie in any way? So what did Archie see or hear that he shouldn't? That night, Charlotte couldn't sleep. She is sitting in the living room looking out the window on the dark street. She thought about all the little things that didn't add up, like lipstick, cars, phones, paintings. And now Archie's secret, it's too much to ignore. She knew she had to learn the truth no matter how painful it is. But Charlotte also felt extremely afraid. What if the truth was too much for her to handle? What if it breaks up their family? And most importantly, how can she keep Archie from getting caught in the middle of it all? As many hours passed, Charlotte decided. She couldn't pretend that everything was fine. She wants answers, but she also knew that finding them could change everything. When the truth appears, there is no way to return. It was evening and the house was quiet. Arthur said he was working late again. And Charlotte tries to keep herself busy to avoid overthinking. After putting Archie to bed, she sat on the sofa, scrolled through her phone. Even if your heart is elsewhere, the mal she had felt for weeks had become unbearable. A sudden loud noise broke her train of thought. A faint voice came from the hallway. Charlotte got up and walked to Archie's room. She slowly opened the door, expecting to find her son asleep. Instead, she saw Archie sitting on the floor with a phone in his hand, not his and not hers. "That's Arthur's." "Archie, what are you doing?" Charlotte asked, softly, careful not to startle him. Archie looked up. Guilt flashing across his face. Dad left his phone. "Here," he said, his small fingers nervously tapping the screen. "A lady called. Her name is Sophia." Charlotte froze. Sophia. The name hit her like a thunderclap. Her heart began to race as she walked closer. "Sophia," she repeated, trying to keep her voice calm. "How do you know her name?" "Sweetheart?" She said it. "When she called," Archie replied innocently, "she asked for Dad, but he wasn't here, so I didn't answer." Trembling all over, Charlotte bent down and gently took the phone from Archie's hands. Her fingers trembled nervously as she opened the call log. There in bold letters was Sophia's name. Not once, not twice, but several times: calls, messages, even voicemails. Charlotte felt her stomach lurch. This was not just a work contact. Something about it felt so personal, so frequent. "You should not be playing with Dad's phone," Charlotte said. With a heavy voice, she kissed Archie on the forehead and ushered him back to bed. "It is getting late. You need to sleep now." Archie nodded under the shadows of innocence, as he did not know of the storm brewing within his mother. "Good night, Mom." So with that, Charlotte queried the door to hold tightly on Arthur's phone. She sat on the edge of her bed and navigated through the messages exchanged between Arthur and Sophia. The conversations were work-related, concerning meetings and deadlines, but the more she read, the softer the words became. 1 or 3 friendly batters went behind it, like naked emojis, and an overall buoyancy found in their exchanges, which Arthur does not show her anymore. One message from Sophia was particular asterisk. Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again asterisk. Charlotte's hands trembled with fear. She stared at the screen. Her thoughts racing, is this real? Was Arthur actually doing this to her, to their family? She felt disgust, deep sorrow, and outright disbelief all at once. Her already shaky world now appeared to be slipping from under her feet. When Arthur finally came home that night, Charlotte was waiting for him in the living room. He looked surprised to see her still awake. "You're up late," he said, setting his bag down. "We need to talk," Charlotte said, firmly holding up his phone. Arthur's face fell as he saw it in her hand. "Who is Sophia?" Arthur's expression hardened. "She's just a co-worker," he said, his tone defensive. "Are you going through my phone? Archie told me about her." Charlotte snapped back. He saw her name flash up on the caller. "ID tonight. And I've seen the text messages." "Arthur, don't lie to me." Arthur sighed and rubbed his temples. "Charlotte, you're overreacting. Sophia's just a work friend. Sure, we chat quite a bit, but nothing more. Archie probably got the wrong impression, misunderstood." Charlotte's voice was rising. She said, "Last night was amazing, and you expect me to believe this is just as casual as that?" Arthur stayed calm, a touch too calmly for even Charlotte's taste, and that seemed to be cramming the foil. She bristled with anger. "You're blowing the whole thing out of proportion," he said. "Sophia and I had dinner after this late work meeting." "That's it. You overcharge your imagination." Charlotte resisted the temptation to scream or throw something, even if the thought appealed to her. Archie was asleep, and she didn't want him to hear them fight. "I don't believe you," she said quietly. "But I'm not going to argue with you about it. Now I'm going to find out for myself." Joshua shrugged as though he had a blank shield on his face. "Whatever, go ahead and do whatever you've got to do, but you will know you're wrong." Charlotte didn't reply. She walked past him, her heart heavy with pain and anger. Once she was alone in their bedroom, she let the tears come. She had wanted to believe him, to trust that he wouldn't betray her. But deep down, she knew the signs were all there, and no matter how much Arthur tried to downplay it, the truth was starting to reveal itself. As she lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, Charlotte made a promise to herself. She would get to the bottom of this no matter what it took. She owed it to herself, and more importantly, she owed it to Archie. Charlotte sat alone in the quiet of the house, her mind racing. The name Sophia had consumed her thoughts ever since she found it in Arthur's phone. She couldn't let it go. Who was this woman? What did she mean to Arthur? And why did Archie seem to know more than he should? Determined to uncover the truth, Charlotte grabbed her laptop and began searching for Sophia online. It didn't take long to find her. Sophia's social media profiles were public, her photos carefully curated, showing her smiling at fancy dinners, traveling to beautiful places, and posing with friends. But one photo stopped Charlotte in her tracks. Sophia was standing in front of a familiar park, the park near their home. Charlotte's heart sank. The image triggered a memory of a drawing Archie had shown her just a few days ago. It was a simple sketch of a woman standing by a bench. At the time, Charlotte hadn't thought much of it, assuming it was just Archie's imagination. But now, as she compared the drawing to Sophia's photo, it became clear Archie had seen Sophia near their house. She felt a mix of fear and anger. Why had Sophia been near their home, and what did this mean for her family? Charlotte knew she had to act. She couldn't let these questions go unanswered. The next day, Charlotte decided to follow Sophia. She had found out from Sophia's social media that she frequented a coffee shop downtown. Charlotte parked across the street and waited her heart. Pounding hours passed, and just as Charlotte was beginning to doubt herself, she saw her. Sophia walked into the coffee shop, her confident stride and warm smile making her stand out. Charlotte stayed her car watching from a distance. She debated whether to confront Sophia, but decided against it. She wanted proof, something undeniable. Charlotte kept watching, and soon her worst fears came true. Arthur walked into the coffee shop. Charlotte's breath caught in her throat as she saw them together. Arthur greeted Sophia with a hug, his hand lingering on her back longer than Charlotte could bear. They sat at a corner table, laughing and talking like they didn't have a care in the world. Charlotte felt tears welling up in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. This wasn't the time to break down, she needed to stay strong suddenly, as if he could sense her presence. Arthur looked toward the window, his eyes locked with Charlotte's. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Arthur's expression shifted to something Charlotte couldn't quite read. Shock, guilt, anger. Charlotte started her car and drove away, her hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. She didn't know where she was going, but she couldn't stay there. Her mind replayed the scene over and over, each detail burning into her memory. By the time she got home, Arthur was already there, waiting for her in the living room. Charlotte, he began, his tone calm but defensive. Let me explain. There's nothing to explain, Charlotte said nervously, her voice trembling. I saw you with him, not what I thought, Arthur said, standing up and stepping towards her. Sophia is a colleague. We were just meeting to discuss work. Charlotte laughed loudly. Work, is that what you call hugging her like a wife? She smiles and you smile like you don't have family in your house. Arthur ran his hands through his hair, the disappointment showing on his face. You're overreacting, he said. This is not fair. You've been in doubt for weeks and now you see things that aren't there. I'm not sure, Arthur. Charlotte shot back, and I'm not stupid. Archie found it near our house. He pulled her away. Why was he here? Why would he even know who he was? Arthur's face darkened. Archie doesn't know what he's talking about, she said. He's a kid. He misinterprets things. You get his attention to you. Charlotte looked at him intently in disbelief and anger. Don't you dare put this on Archie, he said, his voice soft and firm. This isn't about him. This is about you and your lies. Arthur sighed heavily, his shoulders slumping. Charlotte, please, he said, his tone softer. Now you have to trust me. There's nothing going on, but Charlotte couldn't trust him. Not anymore. She had seen too much, felt too much, and his words, instead of reassuring her, only deepened her doubts. That night, as Charlotte lay in bed staring at the ceiling, she felt more alone than ever. The man she thought she knew, the man she had built a life with, was now a stranger, and the woman named Sophia was the key to it all. Charlotte knew she couldn't stop now. She had to find out the truth, no matter how painful it might be, because the truth, she realized, was the only way to free herself. Late one night, Charlotte woke up to the sound of Archie crying in her room. She hurriedly ran towards him. Her heart was beating fast. Archie sat up right on the bed, his little face pale and frightened. Mom, he whispered, wrapping his arms around her. She's outside. Sophia. She's standing by the tree, looking at me through the window. Charlotte was so cold her blood ran cold as she held her son close and stroked his hair. Are you sure, darling? She asked, trying to keep her voice calm. Archie nodded, eyes wide with fear. I saw her, she smiled at me, but it's scary. She doesn't look pretty. Charlotte's mind raced. Why does Sophia have to leave the house? So why is she targeting Archie? Suddenly, everything began to fall into place. This isn't just about Arthur. It's about you. The next morning, Charlotte begins to revive the past. She missed Sophia more than Arthur's co-workers. Many years ago, Sophia had worked at Charlotte's old company. At the time, Charlotte was a manager, forced to release Sophia after making several mistakes. It was a difficult decision, but Charlotte believes that was the decision. Now it seemed Sophia hadn't forgotten or forgiven. Charlotte's dismissal had clearly left Sophia bitter, and she was back to settle a score. Sophia's connection to Arthur wasn't about love or an affair. It was about control, revenge, and making Charlotte suffer. Charlotte confronted Arthur that evening. "Tell me the truth," she demanded. "Sophia's not just some coworker, is she? She's been threatening you, hasn't she?" Arthur hesitated, his eyes filled with guilt. Finally, he nodded. "Yes, he admitted she blames you for what happened years ago, and she's then using me to get to you. She said if I didn't meet her demands, she'd hurt you and Archie." Charlotte felt like gripped by the mingled emotions of fury and embarrassment. Why had Arthur not told her before? Why had he allowed Sophia to manipulate him? But this was not the time to argue, and they had to focus on keeping their family safe. Taking matters into her own hands, Charlotte arranged to meet Sophia somewhere public time to end her sick games. Sophia's cool sent shivers down Charlotte's spine. When they finally came face to face, "You destroyed my life," said Sophia, her voice frosty, "and now I shall destroy yours." Charlotte stood her ground steady, her voice, although all the while there is fear bubbling furiously inside her. "I made a decision based on your actions back then, Sophia. It was not personal, but this threat, my family, this has to end." A flicker of expression crossed Sophia's face, which seemed to show the slightest shadow of doubt for a moment, as if she might reconsider. But then she smiled cruelly and leaned in as if going to whisper to Charlotte, "We'll see about that for some time." Following that confrontation, Charlotte and Arthur worked out ways to keep their family safe first. This involved alerting the authorities about Sophia's increasingly erratic behavior, to change the routine and monitor Archie more closely. Sophia had inflicted deep scars. Archie, though young, was the most affected. He struggled to understand why a stranger had caused so much chaos in their lives. Charlotte knew it would take time for her family to heal, but she was determined to rebuild their sense of .my story ends here. If you feel that this story is meaningful and brings useful lessons, please like and subscribe to the channel to support me. Thanks for listening, and see you in the next videos.